The reason why so many AI projects fail is because these models are not able to handle the complexity of how enterprises use data, the complexity of decision making, complexity of budgets, who are the users.
And including how do you implement from privacy, security.
Right.
Classic analogy here is you can accelerate fast provided you have good controls and brakes. So,
Indeed.
So otherwise you will meet with an accident. And I think creating that right framework in which you can innovate and keep expanding probably is one way in which I anchored a lot of innovation in my career. So
yeah, one of the myths about innovation is that innovation requires no constraints, right? The more free space you have, more imagination you'll have. It doesn't work like that. There's an IBM guy who went and made a 10 million, back in the day, like 50 years ago, made a blunder because of which the company lost $10 million. And he was brought to his manager or CEO, whatever, and he was very afraid. He was sure they was going to get sacked. The guy says, I just spent $10 million training you. You better not make the same mistake again, but make other mistakes.
Is there always a tension between the frontier models getting into some of these post-trained use cases as well? Like OpenAI is now talking about a jobs platform, right? That's quite ironic. On the one hand, we talk about jobs being taken away by AI, but OpenAI is starting a jobs platform.
You have a diamond culture, just play out like 5 years later what happens, because you don't have enough people at the bottom.
Right.
So who occupies the middle? So it's an unsustainable shape.
It's not a stable structure.
It's not a stable structure. A country like Albania, it's a small country, but Albania has now a cabinet rank minister who's an AI. And what they're doing is, they're saying that they will root out corruption. All procurement is going to happen through this AI, and therefore it will be fair and unbiased and so on.
So here we are in another episode of Clearing the Blur with Srikanth Velamakanni. Srikanth, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And before we start our topical discussion, we have a rapid fire round for you.
Of course.
So the first one is, would you rather trust a self-driving car or an AI doctor?
Can I trust both? I would rather trust both than human drivers or human doctors. See, I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Because an AI doctor, think of how many papers are published every year in medicine. Maybe more than 100,000 papers. An average doctor probably reads 1 or 2 papers, maybe 0 papers, but maybe 5, 10 if it's a really good doctor. But an AI can read all the papers and assimilate that knowledge and diagnose a situation better than a human doctor can. So I'd ideally like to have a doctor augmented with AI as my preference. But if I have to choose a doctor, only one doctor or an AI, I might choose AI for lots of diagnostic tasks.
And what about self-driving car?
Self-driving cars, I think I'm very happy to trust a Waymo and sit in that and travel anywhere in the world right now. I think they're pretty good. They've driven more than 10 million miles without any fatality and 80% lower number of accidents overall. So self-driving cars are very real, and I think it's time we trusted them and stopped driving.
So you're taking equal bets on both.
It's a good one. One business buzzword that you never want to hear again.
Oh, my most favorite bad word in business terminology is change management.
Okay.
Because the entire idea of change management comes from that, okay, I built a great product and let's fix the users and let's change the people. No, it doesn't work like that. You've got to change the product and build a better product. You don't change people, you change your environment, you change the product so that you can drive change. So driving adoption instead of calling it change management. And driving adoption is actually about building a better product than changing people.
Right.
It's not about training people, it's not building awareness, fixing them, creating incentives, but it's about change the design, build a better product so that you can have more users.
Right. I love the way you often talk about tech forward versus user backward.
Yes. We all think decisions in data forward instead of thinking, okay, what are the decisions, who are the users, and work backwards.
Right.
A leader, past or present, you would love to shadow for a week?
I would love to shadow Jeff Bezos. If it's a current leader, then Jeff Bezos, because I really like his two principles that I really like about him are A, extreme long-term orientation. more than most people can think of, like 7 years, 10 years. And secondly, his customer obsession. These are the two things that I've learned from Jeff Bezos, but I would love to spend some more time and learn that better. And if I have to go to past, I would pick Swami Vivekananda, because in 1893, in the Parliament of Religions, he could integrate and think of a united worldview of all religions. For someone that visionary, I would love to spend some time and figure out how he was so forward thinking at that time on the world.
That's awesome. Your proudest non-work achievement?
Being a parent. I've absolutely enjoyed every minute of raising my daughter. And yeah, I think that's I think the singular achievement for most people in the world, and for me too.
Awesome.
And one failure that you wouldn't erase, even if you could?
See, I believe in the action consequence of karma. And if you take out one failure, I don't know what will happen to the whole world will get changed. So I would not change anything. I would not take away any failure. I'll keep all of them. I love those failures. They are nice scars on me, and I love to wear those scars proudly.
That was a wonderful rapid fire section, Srikanth. So we'll now move to the actual discussion.
Great. So I think, Srikanth, looking and reflecting back from your journey from where you started your college days at 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗧, I think you mentioned earlier somewhere that you never wanted to be an entrepreneur. You even skipped entrepreneurship classes at 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗧. What changed your mind, and how did meeting N.R. Narayan Murthy help shift your perspective on honest business?
So there were two constraints I had placed on myself as I was growing up. First, we didn't have too much money or too much capital to start a business, and my assumption was that you need a ton of capital to create a business, to create something, to create greater capital. That's number one. And second was that my father used to tell me that there is no such thing as an honest businessman. It's an oxymoron. So I grew up with this notion that, I don't want to get into business and then have to be corrupt and bribe people and get things done and be, sort of do everything that it takes to build a business, and a lot of it unethical. So I told myself that let me work for big companies, let's say well-run companies, ethical companies, maybe multinational companies at that back in the day, instead of trying to start a business. So after meeting Narayan Murthy, those assumptions went away. One is the honest businessman assumption went away, because he was very clear about how he was building Infosys. This was 1997, and Infosys was a tiny company, I think less than $50 million in revenue. But there was something in him and something about the way he had built the business for 15 years at that time, which told me that yes, it's that India has changed. It's not the India of 1980s and 90s. It's a new India where you can be an ethical business and still be successful. Of course, I revisited those in the next 10 years. But that was one. And the second thing was about capital. I saw around .com time, 1999, 2000, there were more than 300 venture capital firms that had come in. So it felt like, you can raise capital. I saw friends of mine raising capital. So once these two assumptions went away, there was no reason why I couldn't be an entrepreneur. And then I did.
And it's been a phenomenal journey there since, right? 2 decades in counting.
It's been very exciting and very meaningful, and with a ton of failures. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. There's so much failure and so much struggle. An average business, on the average, 50% of businesses get shut in the first 2 years, and 98% of businesses fold or get acquired within 10 years. So entrepreneurship is really a matter of a question of survival. Can you build something to survive and eventually thrive? Obviously, we will have
building long term, but looking at survival in short or
so manage cash for the short term and build something really amazing for the long term.
And to become a unicorn, I think that's one in million or billion sort of a situation there. Awesome. So we'll shift our focus to AI and tech insights. So while on the one hand, OpenAI and Google, they are building, massive closed models with billions and trillions of parameters and so on, and they have built an amazing infrastructure around it, right? And you've been speaking about the pre-trained models versus post-trained. What are the pros and cons of it, and how do we extract more value from the post-trained scenario, where I think India has better chances of producing many use cases like healthcare, which you've done?
So pre-training is a big boys and big girls game right now. Yesterday, you may have seen NVIDIA just announced that they're investing $100 billion into OpenAI. This is probably the largest ever private investment in a private company in the history of business.
Yeah.
So it has become a matter of scale. So when you do large pre-training, you're essentially saying, I will bring in enormous amounts of data and compute, an enormous amount of compute, and build in one shot something that has the world knowledge, is extremely capable. There is still value for that. It's still happening. These are called scaling laws. The scaling laws still work. But then once you build the model, there's now action on how can I use the model in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Not just ask a question and get an answer, which is called inferencing, but can I do inference time compute where I'm reflecting, I'm thinking, I'm doing step by step and reflecting on my answers, fixing my answers, and then eventually getting me a good answer.
Yeah.
These kinds of post-training workloads are much easier to train. They're less expensive, and you can get incredible amount of accuracy improvement using that. So the world will be a balance between pre-trained models and then post-trained and agentified workloads. And that's really where I feel like companies that may not have the scale and the capital of OpenAI can still produce amazing products and services doing post-training and customizing, fine-tuning models and building smaller models from the larger models and then using it to build stuff. Now, the way I would like to compare it is these OpenAI type companies are building big power stations. They're building massive power stations that supply power, they supply AI, right? They supply intelligence. It'll come through the pipes, it'll come to your sockets, right? And you can plug in a socket, in comes electricity today, reliably. Similarly, intelligence will flow through those kinds of big companies. Yeah. But then the real need for all of us today is not electricity in itself, but the uses of electricity, like a microwave oven or a refrigerator, a toaster, and televisions and smartphones, etc. This is what people will have to create. Eventually, we'll consume the toasters and the ovens, not just the direct electricity from OpenAI. So companies that are building these using post-trained models and agentified workloads, those will be also very, very valuable.
Awesome. So a follow-up question on that. Is there always a tension between the frontier models getting into some of these post-trained use cases as well? Like OpenAI is now talking about a jobs platform, right? That's quite ironic. On the one hand, we talk about jobs being taken away by AI, but OpenAI is starting a jobs platform. So is there always a tension between the frontier models and what the post-trained models will do?
So you're producing electricity. Your basic job is to be the most amazing electricity producing entity in the world. If you compare AI with electricity, they are producing AI like that. So their job is that. Now they can take that AI and use it for every single purpose in the world. OpenAI or any other company will be able to only address a fraction of the needs,
right?
That because of their fundamental limitation, they don't have infinite number of people. So they will be building some of these use cases themselves wherever they feel like there's pretty significant use case. For example, when GPT-5 came in, they said that they've specifically trained it for healthcare.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that on healthcare related questions, GPT-5 is a significant improvement over GPT-4.
Yeah.
Right.
At the same time, there will be a company like a 𝗕𝗏.ai or 𝗕𝗏𝗏.ai, which will take healthcare specific questions and let's say analyzing a histopathology image or an X-ray or an MRI or CT scan and do it with FDA level accuracy, right? FDA approved accuracy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore can also fit into the workflow of a doctor or a hospital. So that use case will still be very important, and OpenAI is unlikely to go all the way into solving those problems. Therefore, there will be a need for models like OpenAI, and there will be need for companies like 𝗕𝗏 and Fractal and where they are to take that and drive it to amazing success in the real world.
Interesting. I think this is one area where I think we also today are seeing, and this our theme of the podcast is obviously clearing the blur, because there are still a lot of I would say things that we do know, some things we don't know. A lot of it is in between the gray that we talk about. You have formulated some pseudo-equations on AI success. So, and I believe there are 3 such pseudo-equations that we heard about. So can you just take us through that?
Yeah, these equations these are pseudo-equations, but I formulated them in 2021. And somehow they have actually stood the test of time. I'm actually quite surprised that 5.5 years later, they're still quite, quite relevant. Those 3 are the following. Number 1 is now what are called as scaling laws. Nowadays, it's popularly in the AI world, they're called scaling laws. But we had formulated that accuracy or error in a model is a direct function of data, compute, and techniques. So this is something that I had formulated this, and the idea is that if you bring in more data or higher quality of data, if you bring in more compute workloads like the GPUs, etc., and more compute, and you bring in higher quality of techniques, D into C into T is equal to the error rate or inverse of error rate, accuracy. So the more data, more compute, and better techniques will lead to better and better accuracy, which means that the models are far likely to be good and useful in the real world. So that's the number one equation.
Right.
Number two equation is that when you take any problem, let's say I talked about building a microwave oven or a toaster or television, you build any use case in the real world using AI, you have to think of who are the users, what decisions are they making with it, how do I design it for that consumption. So if it's a doctor, then I have to build it in such a way that doctors find it very helpful and useful to use the results of an AI model in how they see the patients, how they see diagnosed situations, and so on. So that requires a user understanding and a design understanding. Then it requires a lot of data understanding, because your custom data flows and from the systems that a hospital is using, that data has to flow through. Our MRI machine is producing an MRI report and a set of images. How can I use those images, put those in this model, do that analysis and produce a result for a doctor? So there is a significant engineering and data engineering workload that is there. And then you need very good algorithms as well. So AI, engineering, and design are the three elements of getting driving results in an organization or for a doctor or so on. So that's the second equation, that results are a function of AI, engineering, and design. You have to intelligently combine these three to drive amazing results. So that's the second equation. The third equation is about how do organizations become successful with AI. And this is at one level higher, right? Not at a level of a problem or a level of a model, but at the level of an organization. So you have to bring in amazing talent. Think of OpenAI. They've brought together something really amazing in terms of talent. Second is a culture where they can experiment, learn, and fix, and so on. A positive error culture where a mistake is not an issue where you get fired, but a mistake is a path to learning. So a culture of learning and improvement, but then strong governance as well, because AI models are getting more powerful. So you need a strong level of responsible AI to make sure that you're producing something really good and useful in the world that doesn't do any harm. So talent, culture, and governance become the third equation. So if you have to bring in organizational effectiveness, it's a function of talent, culture, and governance. So these are the three equations that I formulated. Awesome. And I'm actually quite surprised that they're still very relevant in 2025.
No, absolutely. And I think, and data, like you just mentioned, one of the things that always intrigued me, especially in the healthcare in many areas, while in India we have abundant data, but the challenge is also about the labeling of the data.
Yes.
Because finally the data has to be in a manner that can be used
by,
and created value. And similarly in enterprise, I think enterprise, they need to own and learn a lot faster than the way the AI and frontier models are developing. So I think the pace of adoption and learning is something, again, so I mean, I fully agree. I think these are, and we see these challenges around us today when I talk to
Deepak, you probably see this firsthand with being the Chief Data Officer of Kotak, that enterprises are complex.
Yeah.
Complexity is what really kills you. And while AI models are very good and they also handle a lot of complex data, they haven't yet hit the enterprise complexity level as well. So the reason why so many AI projects fail is because these models are not able to handle the complexity of how enterprises use data, the complexity of decision making, complexity of budgets, who are the users.
And including how do you implement from privacy, security.
Right.
I think we will touch upon this. That's a very
So I want to pick up from the privacy and security sort of challenges, right? When you speak about the closed models, ironically, some of the closed models are called open, right? But then when you talk about the open source models, how do we create the governance around it, given all of these challenges around privacy, security, and so on?
See, one thing to do is to have a very strong layer of responsible AI before release of anything. The more powerful something is, the more safeguards you should have before you can release it for external use. So the way people do is that you create almost an adversarial safety and responsible AI team that runs a whole bunch of automated checks and says that, okay, I have really exhausted an exhaustive set of use cases I'm trying and making sure I twist and break the system, and yet it hasn't broken, and therefore it's good to go. So that's the way in which you set it up, and almost an adversarial team that's interested in safety. In fact, OpenAI had this thing that at least 25 to 30% of the compute will be used for AI safety research and AI safety evaluation. So something like that is required before you launch. And this need is getting bigger and bigger as people are using these AIs for everything. Just to give you one example, in mental health, right? Now, whether you like it or not, you have to acknowledge that today ChatGPT is the biggest mental health resource in the world. No matter how you like it or not, everybody is using it for these kinds of, they are using them as a companion, as an emotion, they're depending on it emotionally, and they even have, when they have plans around self-harm and things like that, they're talking to these tools. Now we have two options. You can shut down the tool, or you prioritize getting it right. Shutting down is very, very hard. OpenAI's business is and they cannot, at one point of time, if you shut down the tool, let's say you figured out that somebody has a self-harm intent and now you shut down the tool, that is not going to work because they probably do it anyway. So you have to build a better tool very quickly. So if I were 𝗖𝗵, I would invest heavily in creating a team around mental health related use case, because that is a very big use case. So that's how you have to prioritize safety around the most important issues, and then get out models that really work in the real world.
Awesome. Now I want to double click on the scaling law as well. So in one of the earlier podcasts we heard, post 2022, the internet has been polluted with a lot of AI content, like a lot of synthetic stuff that is coming in, which is going back again to the model. Over time, because of that's the data part, and the compute as well, we seem to be using electricity to an extent that it's becoming a national priority. Where are we going to get electricity from? So there is a sustainability angle to that. So are we close to hitting the limits already on scaling laws, you think, or is there still room?
From the best experts in the world, my understanding is that we have not hit those limits of scaling laws, at least from extracting intelligence from data is concerned. What exactly are we doing? Right? We are essentially saying we are taking, eventually all energy comes from the sun, right? Everything on our planet is coming from the sun eventually. We are creating solar energy and some derivatives of solar energy into intelligence. Really, that's, if you look at, if you take out everything, that's really what we are doing. And there is a lot more to be done, because that data that we have, there continues to be a lot of data. Yes, there is a problem of internet generated or AI generated data. And the expectation is that in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe 60-70% of all data in the world will be internet generated. Similarly, 70 to 80% of all trades in the financial markets are automated and bot driven. Right now, doesn't mean that there is no signal in the data. We can't say there's still the 20% of the trades that happen with human involvement and other signals. It's still working. The stock markets of the world are still working. In a similar way, there's enough data in the world generated that it can be used to train models, and that value is continuing to hold as of right now, number one. And on the computing front, yes, there is a whole area of responsible computing, and the expectation is that next few years there will be too much demand on electricity and power generation, and maybe the world has not created enough capacity. The exception to this is China. China is at 3 terawatt capacity today, and they're going to 9 terawatts in the next 5 years. So they are building enormous capacity. Whereas India, all of India is, I think, not even a terawatt right now. We have much less than a terawatt capacity for the whole country. And even the US is not investing enough. But China, because of its investments, might be the power supplier to the whole world at some point of time. So that's one point, which is that power generation may not be keeping pace. There will be some temporary spikes in power costs, etc., because of that, and already US people are experiencing that. But I think we will solve it eventually through nuclear power and other sources. How do you make sure that these power consumption, responsible computing is happening in a way that you're not consuming too much water? There are many sustainability issues around this as well. But the fundamental idea is do we have enough power? Do you have enough data? Can we create more intelligent models by scaling them? I think it's still working.
Right. And is that where maybe quantum computing also comes in, right? We need a next jump up when it comes to compute.
Yes, that quantum computing promises to be that scale up in computing, exponential scale up in computing. Quantum, I mean, it's still not very real. It's maybe another 3 to 5 years away.
Right.
And it's not necessarily applied to quantum machine learning thing. Just because quantum computing is there doesn't mean that it directly, immediately translates to AI getting better. Because you need to use that for specific, quantum computing works better for specific algorithms. So training using quantum computing and making sure that it works for AI computes is another huge problem that we have not yet fully solved. There are some initial good results. But like, take a 10-year view, I think this will all happen for sure.
Sure.
No, awesome. I think we'll just go back to my question earlier on the enterprise adoption, because I think while we are making a lot of progress, I still don't see a lot of enterprises moving fast enough. I think a recent MIT report on Gen AI Divide, State of AI Business 2025, they mentioned that only 5% of enterprise AI pilots, they deliver rapid revenue acceleration. I think with about 95% of them failing to produce any measurable ROI. And this is also a classic boardroom discussion. While there is excitement, but a lot of times you do not really scale up beyond pilots, either because of your third law that you just spoke about, lack of talent, understanding, ability to convert what it can deliver for a particular enterprise, be it a manufacturing, financial service, healthcare. You also often say that if AI models are adopted well, then it almost disappears into the background. So do you see that as an ultimate success marker of AI adoption? And where should enterprises who are probably on the fringes between a pilot to some early success, but not yet taking a full bet, should be preparing for this?
See, firstly, let's look at consumer AI. The world of consumer AI has exploded, and the usage is actually going through the roof. You have 700 million weekly active users of ChatGPT, 1.5 billion monthly Google AI overviews. We just talked about the 100 billion investment of NVIDIA into OpenAI. I think 2 weeks ago, Larry Ellison talked about what they're doing with OpenAI, and the stock went up 30-40%. He became the richest person in the world. So there's an enormous amount of interest in AI. Now look at one more thing. This is very, very interesting to me. In March, Microsoft declared that they're processing 50 trillion tokens that month. In May, Google said we're at 500 trillion tokens. That's roughly 500 trillion words. And then in July, they updated that number to 980 trillion tokens. So this scale up is really exponential. It's happening very fast. So consumer AI is succeeding. All of us are relying on it. People don't even mention how much AI they're using, but it is all over the place. Everybody is using AI to do something or the other every day these days. And it's a pretty large fraction of humanity. So it's succeeding. Even when the MIT report, which talks about enterprise AI, it also talks about how users are using their own AI tools and getting their own productivity.
Yeah, personal space we are all, I think, absolutely.
Why is enterprise failing?
Absolutely.
Enterprise is failing. Enterprise AI is not succeeding at the level because AI excitement is not translating to enterprise performance that easily. And the in-between issue is complexity. If I could summarize everything, it's complexity. Data complexity, user complexity, budget complexity, technological complexity, system complexity. These are all the things that are coming in the way. And it's not that you can tap OpenAI and immediately it'll start giving you results. You have to fix the enterprise systems very quickly. It's not that difficult, but it's not that easy either. And that's really the gap that Fractal tries to fill in big enterprises, because we understand that complexity, understand the data complexity, we think of the users and build enough of the pipeline. So this is actually more of the second equation, AI engineering and design. Just the AI is not enough. You need a lot of engineering, you need a lot of design in order to solve that. And even in AI standpoint, there are 2 million models on Hugging Face today, 2 million models. So knowing which model to use for what purpose and using it in a good way, using engineering and design, I think it's hard. So that's why you're seeing a lot of the failures, but it's only a matter of time. We are going to crack that problem. And in the next 3 to 5 years, I think every enterprise will have to up the overall tech spends. The way I think about it is that you're spending about 4.5% of revenue on tech today. Average company in the world spends 4.5% of revenue on tech. That's going to go up to maybe 6 or 7. And big companies like, banks already spend 5% of revenue in India, and globally 10% of revenue on tech is spent. So you'll see higher spend on tech, and the larger fraction of that going into more AI workloads. And that's how spends will go up, results will go up. It's just a matter of time before we figure this out.
So you're doing a lot in terms of training, making sure that there is enough of reskilling and awareness around how enterprises should get onto the bandwagon. But if you have to just recommend 3 things probably to a lot of folks who are part of different companies, and they keep coming to me also to say, we are here, but how do we move forward? From your vantage point, if you have to just tell the enterprise folks 3 things to get started to really convert value out of this beyond pilot, what would those be?
I would say, firstly, pick a much more narrow problem than ever before. Just define a very narrow area that you want to think of, and take that. Don't just think of that decision, but think of the process, the small process that's around that. Reimagine that business process with AI. That's where massive value is to be unlocked. Think of a trade finance kind of situation, right? You have a letter of credit, you open a letter of credit, and then the exporter shipped their goods, and now they send the document saying that, hey, I fulfilled my responsibility, bank, please release my funds. The importer has to pay. Now this part of the process, if you think of this process, it's very document intensive.
Yeah.
It's human intensive too, because humans have to read those documents.
And workflows and
exactly.
Paper and
Take this workflow and see how can AI augment every aspect of this workflow. There is incredible amount of value to be generated in the process. But it is not going to happen just by, putting a computer vision model and saying it just do one part of this, read the documents and fix something. You may have to figure out the specific use cases, your context, the trade finance context, getting more data sources. Now you've clearly specified that I am going to improve the response time when the time it takes for me to approve the documents that I've received from the exporter. I want to make sure that time is not 2 days or 1 day or 5 days, but it is, let's say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Now, if you have clearly focused and specified that problem, get the data in the system, get the users, augment with AI, and go and solve the last mile problem. There will always be some last mile problems in situations like these. Solve that problem, then you can drive adoption. Once you're successful, then expand it out to other places. So that's how I would build it out.
So identify the problem, go back to the basics and look at how you operate. What's the value you can derive before you apply any of these? Back to what we used to do during digital workflows and automation.
It's kind of obvious when stated.
Awesome. Go back to the first principle.
Always.
So I think what you mentioned is echoing that sentiment as well. Take a problem, right, and solve the problem that generates value to the customer. So it's not like be obsessed about the task, because the task may become redundant tomorrow.
Absolutely. Tasks will get automated.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we're thinking in this is that if you think of roles in the future, they're going to be different from today. So you take what is a job, right? What is a job description? Like I have a set of metrics that I'm chasing. These are the key result areas. Yeah. There are some activities that I perform every day. I collaborate with a few people. I use some tools to accomplish all of this. Now, firstly, I think my KRAs might change. I might move from subjective to much more objective output-driven metrics and input metrics. Yeah. Did you spend 8 hours a day to saying, oh, how many documents did you clear today? If you move from input to output metrics. Yeah. Second, you might have activities, like half the activities you don't have to do anymore because AI will do it automatically. Other half of the activities you will be AI augmented. There'll be few activities maybe where you may still have completely human realm, right, but that will change. 3, the number of people you collaborate with might change. You might not have to collaborate with that many people, or you may have to collaborate in a different way. And 4, your tools will change because you'll have more AI-driven tools. You have to learn those tools. Yeah. So you have to take a holistic view of how do roles and people change in a world of AI. Yeah. I think that's where we'll get really good answers, rather than taking a very blunt brute force approach that, hey, this will happen, or how many jobs would get eliminated. Yeah. Yes, jobs will get eliminated because if you bring in productivity, automatically 100 units of work takes 100 hours to accomplish. Now 100 units of work will take 20 hours to accomplish. Right. Then you have 80 hours freed up. That is going to happen. Yeah. It's inevitable.
Yeah. So that leads me into this question around talent, culture, and governance. Right. What is the hardest for organizations to get right, and why? Talent, culture, and governance.
Culture is the hardest. because culture is difficult to change and it sets in with lots of time. And these are sometimes culture is like you've seen that joke, right? Fish in a water, and fish is meets somebody and says, okay, the water upstream is bad, and the guy turns around and says, what is water? It never knows what water is because it's always grown up in this water. So culture is the immersive environment in which we all work. It's difficult to change, and you may have a large company which has an organization culture, and the culture required in the AI team may be different, and therefore creating that micro culture is going to be hard. So that is the hardest one to change and influence. But for doing very innovative work, you need a supportive culture of positive error culture, as I was saying, and a place where you can nurture the talent and they can be free to do what is right. So that kind of culture is difficult to create or change in the organization.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah. No, and I think more successful the organizations are, they think doing more of same will keep them going forward. So unless they really hit a crisis, they at times do not even go and change fast enough.
Like what got you here won't get you there.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so I think moving to another question, Srikanth, you also are the vice chair of NASSCOM. So apart from, of course, being a thought leader, running a successful company, you're also seeing the entire ecosystem and using this vantage point of how you see the whole Indian IT and tech ecosystem is evolving, both from policy as well as from practice. How do you see the readiness of Indian industries, especially in the environment where we are talking of AI first economy, looking at building it as one of our key tenets of repositioning or transitioning, be it our enterprise, factories, labor workforce. So I think, and especially also through adopting some of the best global models through our own indigenous innovation. So what are your thoughts on that?
See, firstly, we are in a period of amazing rapid change. It's not for the faint-hearted, and there's a lot changing. And certainly AI is going to first attack AI and tech before it attacks another industry. Like company that makes chocolate will continue making chocolate. Yes, they'll get better at making chocolate using AI. But AI fundamentally changes how tech is built or tech is delivered.
Absolutely. I think everybody is saying what will happen to all the Indian IT companies who have been developing and serving the world.
Yes. So there is going to be a massive change. What is the bright side? Companies are going to spend more on tech. They're not going to spend any less on tech. Think of any major Fortune 100 CEO, she or he is reporting to the Wall Street and saying, hey, we found ways to reduce our spend on tech. I don't think the stock is going to go up if they say that they're reducing tech spends. They have to increase their tech spends. So worldwide tech spends will increase. So if you take a look at Indian tech industry, it can benefit from the increased tech spends. Usually it always benefits from increase in tech spends. The question is, are we in a position to receive? How do we transform in a way that we can receive the additional tech spend? Can everybody do it? No. Some of them will fail because they have not reinvented themselves to address this newer tech spends. But the ones who are innovative will absolutely succeed and take their business to the next level. So that's why I feel optimistic about the overall world of tech.
Yeah, but I think the IT companies have to innovate, change their business model and find a new source of value.
Indeed.
Right? Because
Indeed.
we cannot end up doing again back to this more of same.
Indeed. The good news is that tech companies are fundamentally very smart people who have been figuring these things out, and they're not sitting quietly on their haunches. They are figuring it out. So I hope.
But the next sort of challenges are coming from very unknown places. That's why this question was that, while
no one can take this for, like I keep saying, no one can take their AI credibility for granted. No one can take their tech chops for granted. Things are changing so fast that if you sort of sit quietly for 6 months, you will probably be outdated by then.
Because the talent can come from anywhere in the world. They don't need to come back to India or probably some of those markets who are large traditional IT heavyweights for serving the global companies.
There's a massive threat, and that massive threat is the biggest opportunity in the world as well. It depends on who captures that opportunity.
Right. I think well put. So the pie is increasing in size. What slice of that are you going to receive is the question. And I think that's a question of innovation as well, right? How do you reinvent what got you here will not take you to the next step.
For example, I mean, you have to move away from input-based models to output-based models. Meaning, are you going to get paid for the number of hours and number of people you bring in, or are you going to get paid for what value you're delivering. Fundamentally, that shift is going to happen in the tech world in the next few years. Whether it is subscription, license revenues, is it more fixed bid, or is it outcome-based, output-based? These are all output-based models. That is where I think I see a fundamental shift, and if the Indian tech industry moves in that direction, I think it'll be very powerful.
But are you seeing Indian tech industry moving with greater urgency and purpose towards that, or there is still measured steps?
Yes, I see a lot of clarity of purpose. They are large organizations, and some of them have 1 million people working for them.
Yes.
So change is not that easy, even for these relatively agile companies. But you see the writing on the wall, and you also see the clarity of purpose. So I think they're getting there.
One of the things that we are also picking up, Deepak and I, we've been having conversations with folks, that India is the use case capital of the world for AI. What are the top use cases can our IT services, leaders also think about, instead of thinking about body shopping or low-end services work? Are there use cases that we can focus on?
See, firstly, on the use case capital of the world, it's good because we have 1.4 billion people. But let's not limit ourselves to just being a place for use cases. I think India should also be the AI research fountainhead for the world as well. We should not take that lightly, because not just because AI research is cool, but because AI research leads to AGI. And if we are not on the AGI bandwagon, a lot of the surplus could be taken away by the rest of the world. And we have to fundamentally think of that as a big nation of 1.4 billion people. Now, moving to the AI use cases, I think there are a ton of use cases because of the scale and scope of our population. The biggest use cases come from things like education, healthcare, and agriculture, and even things like handling Supreme Court and judicial. So India has severe constraints in terms of capital and amount of resources we have relative to population. Therefore, India could be the biggest users for technology because technology fundamentally will be much, much cheaper than any other way to solve these use cases at the scale at which we're talking about. So whether it is healthcare, can we provide primary healthcare for every person in our country free of cost or relatively free of cost? And can we get better diagnosis? Can we solve some of the major illnesses that India will have many people? This could be rare in the rest of the world, but they are not rare in India because we have that many population. So we have use cases, we have the data sets, we have the population to solve healthcare challenges of the world. Education, can we provide quality education, meet the student where she is at every level, and then take them to the next level using AI? Absolutely we can. So like Khan Academy and other examples are there. So education. Agriculture is still a large portion of our workforce is in agriculture. Can we use and improve agricultural productivity dramatically using AI? Absolutely we can, with proper information, proper advice, proper models. We can do that. And lastly, in judicial cases, right? India has huge load of cases that are not processed. Can we create a way by AI adjudication of cases? I think it will be very powerful. A country like Albania, it's a small country, but Albania has now a cabinet rank minister who's an AI. Right? And what they're doing is they're saying that they will root out corruption. All procurement is going to happen through this AI, and therefore it will be fair and unbiased and so on. Now that's just an example, but can we bring in an AI adjudicator to solve some of the smallest cases and speed up the courts?
I think improve overall the quality of life for the citizens. I think absolutely.
And on skilling, right, and new talent development, right, you've co-founded 𝗪𝗪𝗪 University. Why did you feel India needed a new kind of tech university, and what leadership lessons are you hoping to instill there?
Yeah, we thought that it's time to reimagine higher education, and that's the initial idea behind 𝗪𝗪𝗪. And we thought first that engineering education has to be much more multidisciplinary. If you think of biology and AI, and a lot of healthcare stuff we're talking about is biology plus AI. You need to know both. Or if you may need to do cybersecurity and AI, and maybe you need to know things like how to build a robot.
IoT and AI.
Yeah, you need mechanical engineering. So many of these fields are converging. So how do you create multidisciplinary disciplines? That was number one. Number two, we felt that you can always produce a good engineer, but can you produce a great leader? Can you produce a great entrepreneur? So we thought, let's create leaders rather than just engineers. So how do we create the leaders of tomorrow? And third, we said, it's not just people who can work in organizations, but people who can start businesses. So let's teach entrepreneurial skills as well. So if we create a combination of bring these combination to the world, we'll create greater leaders of tomorrow in our country who are starting businesses, building great businesses, and builds India. One Plaksha is not going to be enough. We're going to graduate 200, 500 a year, maybe 1,000 a year, but we need probably 100 Plakshas to solve for India.
No, that's a great start. I think it has to start from somewhere, right? So you also talk about creating you spoke earlier, right, about Jeff Bezos as someone that you will definitely like to shadow, and you spoke about his positive error culture and what it did. So how did organizations practically foster that kind of the culture in the environments that are often risk averse? Because I know like BFSI, where I spent a long time, I think the cost of something going wrong is far higher than the reward for innovation. And many other, I think, industries promote more of a incremental or a status quo kind rather than going and taking a risk and then you realize something has gone wrong. So I think this is like we spoke about culture. This is also about the mindset and how organizations foster and bring this whole culture into their path. So, I mean, how do you think Indian enterprises, organizations should bring that into their operating framework?
See, firstly, I think a positive error culture means that you're tolerant of mistakes. There's probably a story that you've heard that there's an IBM guy who went and made a 10 million, back in the day, like 50 years ago, made a blunder because of which the company lost $10 million. And he was brought to his manager or CEO, whatever, and he was very afraid. He was sure they was going to get sacked. The guy says, I just spent $10 million training you. So you better not make the same mistake again, but make other mistakes. We want you to make other mistakes because that's part of
smart
success.
failures.
Yeah. So I think that kind of a culture, it's very easy to say, it's very hard to implement inside an organization. Secondly, some cultures are compliance oriented by design. A financial services firm has to have a strong compliance orientation. Even an AI company has to have very high safety orientation. Similarly, an airline has to make sure that they follow checklists, and safety is very important. So how do you make sure that where you need compliance, you have that culture, and where you need innovation, you have that culture too? How do you get both? That is really the biggest challenge that companies have to crack. So you may have to create pockets where you have adversarial teams almost. One focus on compliance, but one focus on pushing the boundaries and create a way in which they can coexist in an organization. I saw that in ICICI. You know, when I worked for ICICI for a brief time in my early career, I saw that ICICI was very entrepreneurial. They would go tell me, go do this deal. And I was like, I have never done a deal like this before. And you were asking me to go and package a bunch of mortgages and debentures and use a mutual fund to do a collateralized debt obligation. Everything was new. And yet we had a very strong legal team that was going to tell us what is wrong, what is right. And we could go ahead and experiment within that and launch something. So that is possible, and I hope more organizations become
so my
like that.
classic analogy here is you can accelerate fast provided you have good controls and brakes. So,
Indeed.
So otherwise you will meet with an accident. And I think creating that right framework in which you can innovate and keep expanding probably is one way in which I anchored a lot of innovation in my career. So
yeah, one of the myths about innovation is that innovation requires no constraints, right? You know, as the more free space you have, more imagination you'll have. It doesn't work like that. It's if I say write a poem, it's like, okay, write a poem. It's just unconstrained. Anything can be written.
Yeah.
But if I say write a poem about using technology in the workplace, then it becomes a little easier because now you have some constraints to work with. So constraints are actually important in innovation. The more constrained you are, the more innovative you can get. So it's not about getting rid of constraints, but to create constraints in a way that you can.
Classic India space story, right?
Indeed.
So I think we have all seen how with limited budget you can still
Indeed.
make that.
And building on Deepak's question on culture, are you seeing something change in the structure of organizations? Right, thinking about how people say with AI, you don't need as many freshers these days, right? So from a typical pyramid kind of a structure, some people are talking maybe we're getting into a rhombus, a diamond, with a fat part actually in the middle, right? But the question is, how do you even get there without enough people going through and learning the ropes of the system? Any thoughts on the structure?
If you have a diamond culture, just play out like 5 years later what happens, because you don't have enough people at the bottom.
Right.
So who occupies the middle? So it's an unsustainable shape.
It's not not a stable structure.
It's not a stable structure.
Yeah.
So you need a pyramid, and the pyramid might actually be, it's maybe better to build a flatter pyramid now, because the brightest people are the ones who are most amenable to, most friendly with the new technology, and who can adopt new technology. They have no baggage. They're doing it for the first time. So if I had the choice, I would make it a much flatter organization with a very large base of the pyramid, because the best and the greatest talent is the one that's just graduating right now. Even if I have to invest a couple of years of my time in training them, but that is where the future of the world is. So any company that's saying, okay, let's stop hiring freshers because I don't need them, is making a very short-term myopic
yeah, absolutely, sure. And on that, you speak about building an institution that can last 100 years, right? That's durability. And what's the one cultural value you believe that can help you achieve that? In this context of rapid change?
Yeah, one thing is using the newspaper test. I feel like, assume that everything you're doing is being recorded or being published in the newspaper, and be good with that, right? That automatically creates a level of sort of transparency in a culture that everybody can see and they can question you. Secondly, create mechanisms where people can ask questions. You need to create institutional mechanisms of error correction. The best cultures are created when there's an institutional mechanism of error correction. It's not that one guy is always right, but that many people are pointing out issues, and you have a system by which you can recognize the issues and fixing those issues. That's how institutions get built. So if you want to create a 100-year-old organization, which are the kinds of organizations that have lasted 100 and 1,000 years? Education institutions. They have those kinds of institutional mechanisms. Like Oxford is 1,000 years old, and I wish we had Nalanda, who've been thousands of years old. And how do you create those kinds of structures of freedom of expression, error correction, and so on?
So what an incredible conversation that was. Srikanth just didn't give us insights into AI and entrepreneurship, but he gave us a masterclass on resilience, humanity, I think long-term thinking and institution building. And I loved how he broke down even something very complex into very simple bite-size 3 equations, simple, memorable, and powerful. And Srikanth showed us that AI isn't just about big models and big tech, but it's also about solving the real human problem, and that too for a country like ours, population scale problem with data design and culture.
Yeah, so and for me the big takeaways are the way you apply math to everything that you do. I think number of data points that you've shared with us, that's inspiring, and I think your focus on human behavior, I think that stands out, right? It's not just data alone, but when you apply it in the context of human behavior is when actually change happens. My biggest takeaway is I often think in terms of change management. That's one shift that has happened in my head after this conversation. So thank you so much for all the insights. And as Deepak mentioned, it was not just about data or AI. You spoke about values of the organization. You spoke about culture. I think this conversation in many ways is so balanced, because on the one hand, we speak about futurizing, everything has to be AI, but you're balancing it so cleanly with culture and well-being and the value system of the organization. So immense takeaways. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Deepak.
Huge thank you, Srikanth, once again, I think, for reminding us that the future of AI and leadership isn't just about algorithm. It's about empathy, ethics, and endurance.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, if you enjoyed today's episode, you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe. And share this with a friend who might be curious about how AI and leadership are reshaping the world. We'll be back next week with another conversation, another leader, and another blur to clear. Until then,
stay curious.
Stay curious.